squeezing and shoving. It just didn't seem right to me to go along with it completely. And so there was another shout, "Raise your hands higher!" And out came the high school study teacher. And I looked at the soldier and said, "Could you help me understand why you're screaming at me?" "Don't say anything. Keep your eyes glued on the soldier in front of you. Raise your left leg higher." And I lost my balance, literally. And some other kind of balance inside of me seemed to, I think, get jerked, and I just couldn't help it. I said, "I'm sorry, but I can't cooperate with this any longer." Bang! I was down on the floor in seconds. I had a black eye from the impact. My wrists were tied. My ankles were tied. My wrists and ankles were tied together. They call it hog-tied. And somebody about Mark's size was kneeling on me, referring to me with a word I can't say inside your church, and I couldn't breathe. And so I said, "Excuse me, but you're hurting me. I can't breathe." Nothing. This guy is still kneeling on me full force, and I couldn't get a breath, and I thought maybe I'm going to pass out, so I tried to say something again. I said, "Look, I'm sorry, but you're really hurting me, and I can't breathe." Nothing. This person is still kneeling on me, and I had an image of where the dogs and the headlights, and so then I finally kind of was digging in my bag of tricks, and I said, "Look, I've had 4 lung collapses in the past," which is true, from congenital disease tissue, "and I can't breathe." That did it. The fellow got off of me, I took a deep breath, and I was okay. Now I'm still hog-tied, right? And they have to take me to Station K, where they take your picture. And now I have to ask you to stay with me for this part of the story. It's very, very important. I was carried by 4 soldiers, and the soldier who had me under the left armpit, when they propped me up to take my picture, had to do something about the fact that when they'd taken the rubber bands out of my hair, I looked like the shaggy dog. The hair was in front of my face, and I can't move it because I'm hog-tied. So he said, "Excuse me, ma'am, but in order to take your picture, we'll need to move the hair out from in front of your face. Will that be all right?" I said, that's fine. And so he very gently moved the hair, and then he squeezed my shoulder. "I know those cuffs are real tight, ma'am," he said. "We're going to get them off of you as soon as we can." And I needed that. I was pretty shaky at that moment. And isn't that how it so often happens? Just when you think the lights have gone out on humanity, some reassertion happens. And I will never forget that young man, what he looked like and what he said. "We're going to get those cuffs off of you as soon as we can." And I think there are many, many young soldiers over in Afghanistan, and there were many in Iraq, who wanted to get the cuffs off, who wanted to alleviate the suffering, who didn't want to be part of a menacing force. But I know that I also have to be responsible to recognize that night after night in Afghanistan, squads of soldiers on assignment are told, "This is your job, you're with the Joint Special Operations Forces, you're a Green Beret, you're a Marine, you're a Ranger, you go into that house, you kick down the door, you come in with your dogs are barking, the lights are flashing, the people inside are terrified, you hog-tie the householders and any of the men, you push any women out of the way, you get those men in the pickup truck, you take them away, and they may not see their families again for 6 months or a year." And do we think that this will make us more secure? People who can't run from our drones, people who can't escape our night raids, and people whose children can be out on a mountainside collecting the twigs and the wood to bring fuel home to their very poor families who otherwise would have to burn shoes or trash. The kids are out on the mountainside. March 15th of this year in Kunar, the Peck River Valley, and one little boy was covered by a tree at the beginning of an attack, so he was an eyewitness. His name was Wahid. And what Wahid said is that the other boys looked and saw a helicopter come very low, and then they saw a green flash, and the next thing he knew, the helicopter had gone up very high and shot each one of his friends, one by one. The children were aged 9 to 15. It It's like the My Lai massacre. And I tell you that also wanting you to remember that I did not care when I was a university student. But we can care. It's who we are as people, as human beings, people who can care. And so I'm so fortunate, so lucky, really, to get new wind in my own sails by having met young people called the Afghan Youth Peace Volunteers. And these are a wonderful set of youngsters. They themselves have been made refugees twice over. Their families once had to flee the Soviets when they were little toddlers. They remember being in very cold refugee camps with no shelter when they fled the Taliban. Young Abdullah's father was killed by the Taliban. Zekarullah's brother was killed. Some of them lost their uncles. And these kids don't want to be involved in revenge. They don't want to see their country sold out. They don't want to see their future negotiated by their occupiers or invaders, but they don't themselves want to say, we can't rest until we get revenge. And they're youngsters whom I first learned of when Nancy and I and Bill were in Washington, D.C. We were fasting as part of the Witness Against Torture campaign, trying to draw attention to Guantanamo and Bagram. And while we were there, we learned that these youngsters in the central highland province of Bamyan were accompanying us on this fast. They too were fasting, and it's very unusual for young kids to take on a 24-hour style of fasting for 3 days in a row. But this they did because of their belief that maybe nonviolence could work, and they'd heard about these nonviolent peacemakers, and so somebody in Pax Christi in Metro DC arranged for us to talk with them via Skype. And our friend Carmen Trata, in the middle of the Skype call, nudged me and he said, you know, it's Martin Luther King's birthday today. You think we can try to see if these kids ever heard of him? And I said, sure, it's a free country, say something. So Carmen walked up to the microphone, and as soon as he mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King, there was a commotion at the other end. We couldn't see anything because these kids don't have a video camera, and they were doing it by cell phone in the middle of the night, huddled together in a small home. And the kids were trying to decide who would be the first to deliver their memorized quotes from the speeches of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. So I thought to myself, I really want to meet these youngsters someday, and that's what has occasioned multiple trips going back and forth to Afghanistan. The most recent of which, there were 28 of us from the United States who went and spent time over the course of 3.5 weeks, being their guests in Kabul informally, and had a chance to go and be with them in Bamyan. Well, you've been so great to listen to all this, and I want to hear from Karimish as well. I think perhaps it would be fitting, I hope, for me to close earnestly wanting to get back in touch myself with the sorrow of warfare. It wasn't very easy for my Irish mother. That the first time I was ever arrested, it was for singing songs inside the Chicago post office, and the one we most sang was an Irish ballad. We were singing as people were coming in for draft registration. Some of you would remember that Jimmy Carter had reinstated draft registration way back in 1979. So we thought, well, if we stand by the place where these guys are registering and let them know that they've got support if they ever decide not to register, or if there's some way that they want to change their mind. And so we decided to sing a song that's actually familiar to many, many Americans in a kind of rewritten form. You may have heard, When Johnny Comes Marching Home Again. But that's not the original song. The original was written by Padraig Colum, an Irish thinker and writer, who saw Irish conscripts coming back from the Seychelles Islands, and the British had conscripted them, forced them to go and fight in a war that they had no stake in whatsoever, but many of them came back very badly maimed and wounded, many of them amputees, some of them eyeless, legless. And so Padraig Colum wrote verses, and I'd like to share those with you. While on the road to sweet Athy, aroo, while on the road to sweet Athy, aroo, while on the road to sweet Aroo, where are your eyes that look so mild? Aroo, Aroo, where are your eyes that look so mild? When my heart you first beguiled, oh, why did you run from me and the child? Oh, Johnny, I hardly knew you. You haven't an arm and you haven't a leg. Aroo, Aroo. You haven't an arm and you haven't a leg. Aroo, Aroo. Oh, you haven't an arm and you haven't a leg. You're an eyeless, armless, chickenless egg. You'll come to be put out with a bowl to beg, but your Peggy will never leave you. They're rolling out the guns again. Aroo, Aroo. They're rolling out the guns again. Aroo, Aroo. They're rolling out the guns again. But they'll never take our daughters and sons again. No, they'll never take our daughters and sons again. Oh, Johnny, I'm swearing to you. Saifullah, I'm swearing to you. Hadidullah, I'm swearing to you. Ismatullah, I'm swearing to you. And so I try to say to myself, swear. Swear, Kathy Kelly, you won't be involved in slaughter. We can put an end to it. We can put war into the dustbin of history. We can't guarantee which generation will be in that pivotal turning point any more than the early abolitionists could guarantee when slavery might come to an end. We can't say that it'll be bloodless any more than the end of slavery was bloodless, but we can say that there's no better vocation. And I was kind of a little prophet at Loyola University in my snotty little self when I said, oh, I don't know, maybe they don't have anything better to do. He didn't. We don't. Thank you so much for your kind attention.